Welcome in. It's Big Ten Today. It's presented by Gatorade on this Monday. Great to have you with us. I'm Dave Revson. Action-packed hour, including a conversation with a Big Ten student who saw their dream come true in the past week. All of that ahead, but we're going to start you off with a week that we always look forward to. The Big Ten baseball tournament gets underway tomorrow in Omaha. It's our big story. 8 teams set to go at it. You look at the bracket, Illinois, the outright Big Ten champs after sweeping Purdue over the weekend. The Illini winning 7 of their last 8 to capture the title. They will open with 8-seed Penn State tomorrow. Nebraska, the 2-seed, they'll face Ohio State. You've got the old Oaken Bucket baseball style in the opener with Indiana and Purdue. First game of the double elimination tourney. And then Michigan and Iowa wait until Wednesday for their tourney opener. Former Nebraska outfielder and Big Ten Network analyst Jeff Lizzie joins us now to break down the tournament just a little bit. And Jeff, one of the things that really stood out to me as we talked about the Big Ten this year was how wide open it was and how even it was. We ended up with just 4 games separating first place and 5th place in the league. So as you look at it and you get ready for the conference tournament, do you believe that there is a team or a few teams maybe that have separated themselves, or do you still see it as kind of just wide open?
Yeah, it's a great question. There was so much parity. I mean, shoot, you look at even Maryland this year is a team that had a high RPI and was a really good team that gets left out of the tournament. So you look, I mean, 1 through 8, this conference tournament is pretty wide open. I really like the top half, though. I mean, you look, again, Illinois has been on fire. Indiana's a good team. Nebraska's a really good team. Iowa's a team that if Iowa gets into a regional, there aren't a lot of teams that are going to want to face them. So there's a lot of depth in the conference, and it's strong top to bottom.
Well, let's talk about the teams at the very top. I want to start with Illinois, and it's kind of no secret to what Illinois does, right? They're going to hit the ball. They hit with power. They had 103 home runs, or have 103 so far this year. I would expect they're going to hit some more in Omaha. Just to give people perspective, the next team in the league has 77 homers. So, I mean, the gap is just enormous between Illinois and everyone else. So for people who haven't seen the Illini, who, again, won the regular season, what should they expect?
Yeah, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head, right? A team with a ton of power, and there's really no easy outs in their lineup, right? So sometimes you have a team that's maybe top heavy, and there's 2 or 3 guys in the lineup that you fear. You look at that Illinois team, and it's 1 through 9. I think they have maybe 6 guys in the lineup with double-digit home runs. So there's no easy out, and so it's really difficult on opposing teams and opposing pitchers because you make a mistake and they're going to punish it. And this week at Charles Schwab Field and Stadium in Omaha, it'll be interesting because sometimes the ball doesn't travel there well. If the wind's blowing in, it could give Illinois some problems. They may have difficulty hitting the long ball, but if wind's blowing out or if it's a calm day, you can see Illinois be really offensive. And they are just such a well-built offensive team. They've been playing really good baseball down the stretch. So they're a dangerous team in this tournament.
It's interesting, then the 2-seed is a team that relies far more on its pitching in Nebraska. They lead the Big Ten in ERA, lead the Big Ten in WHIP as well. For people who haven't watched the Huskers this year, what should they be looking for as they head to Omaha?
Yeah, and you look at that Nebraska team, I mean, especially at the top end with Sears and McConaughey on the mound, they are such a dangerous team with those 2 starters. And then they started to develop Jackson Brockett, who threw the no-hitter a few weeks ago, and he's been good. Drew Christo has been good in relief down the stretch here, Jalen Worthy. So they've got some good arms on the Nebraska team. They're a team that's built that could make a run in the tournament. Lineup doesn't have as much thump as like a team like Illinois, but they still put up runs, and it's a deep lineup. So again, they're another team that's absolutely dangerous and playing some good baseball.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, to look at some of the bracketology here, Jeff. It seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong here, so correct me if I am, but it feels like the only team that is really a lock to make the NCAA tournament is Nebraska. Would you agree with that they're kind of in no matter what, and everyone else kind of needs to perform here in Omaha?
Yeah, I would think Illinois is. I would hope Illinois is, winning the regular season and how they've played down the stretch. The RPI isn't quite as good for them. Gosh, I'll tell you what, I've seen Indiana a few times. I covered the whole Nebraska-Indiana series, and that Indiana team is really, really good. I mean, I don't know that Indiana is in. They may have to win the Big Ten tournament. My personal thought is if they make a deep run and don't win the tournament, they're a team that should get in as well. So, yeah, I mean, definitely teams that probably have to do some work in the tournament to get in and to feel comfortable. But I truly believe you look at Illinois, you look at Nebraska, you look at Indiana and Iowa, those four are all regional type teams and all teams that I can promise you, if you're a 1 seed, a 2 seed, and a regional, you're not going to want to face any of those 4 teams in regional play.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Iowa. This is a team with the pitching staff that I think everyone thought was just going to dominate in the Big Ten this year. It didn't come to pass early on, but it kind of feels like they found their stride a little bit. Would you agree with that assessment? Give me some insight into the Hawkeyes here.
Yeah, I was good. I was really good, and they did. They had some struggles from Brody Brecht, Overmuller, and Marcus Morgan, and I mean those are the 3 frontline starters for Iowa that give you a chance every time out. And it was they walked guys early. That's been their issue, right? For Iowa, is they've walked too many guys. But if they can start to dial that in, and Brecht has been really good. That's a really, really dangerous Iowa team that was a preseason top 25 team. Offensively, they're strong. So, again, I mean, if they can kind of harness the walks, right, and be in the zone, they're as good as anybody. And they're a team that could not only make a run through the Big Ten tournament, but in the postseason and regionals, super regionals as well.
And again, important to remember as we head into the Big Ten tournament that whoever wins gets the automatic bid. So we can talk about projections and bracketology all we want, but if you win this thing, if you go to Omaha and come out on top, you're going to the NCAA tournament. So let's start breaking down some of these games. And coincidentally, you're going to have the first call tomorrow morning. We've got what I think is a pretty interesting game. Indiana, who you've already raved about. I mean, Purdue, this was a first-place team in the Big Ten as of a couple of weeks ago. They faded here down the stretch, though, Jeff. How do you see this matchup between the 2 in-state foes?
Yeah, I'm excited to get this. Game 1 of the Big Ten tournament tomorrow morning, right? And you've got the in-state rivalry. The last time these teams played in the Big Ten tournament, I think it was back in 2012. And there's benches clearing brawl in that game, right? And so, I mean, there's no love between the 2 programs. It should be a lot of fun. Honestly, both teams are really offensive. So it could be interesting, you know, and you get first round of the tournament first game starting on Tuesday. So you get short rest for the starters. I think both teams are throwing their aces in that game, but sometimes teams play it a little bit different with who they start on the mound as well in game 1 with the quick turnaround time. So it's going to be an exciting matchup. Like you said, Purdue's dangerous. I mean, we talk about the top end of the conference and the top end teams. Purdue is offensive, and they were playing really, really good baseball. Like I said, it faltered a little bit down the stretch, but if they can get hot, this is a dangerous Purdue team that could make a run.
No doubt. They're the only team that's in this 18 field that was under 500 in its final 10 games. They went 3-7. But again, you look at where they were a few weeks ago, and you don't really have to strain too much to imagine them making a very good run here. I mentioned there are 4 matchups that we already know are set in the opening day, and then the last matchup gets played on day 2 of the tournament. Aside from that one we just talked about, is there one that really jumps out at you as being particularly intriguing?
Yeah, I'm excited for, again, Iowa, Michigan. I think that's going to be a fantastic game. Again, Iowa's a team that, I mean, they might be the favorite. Iowa's a really, really good baseball team, and that's going to be a tough matchup in their opener against Michigan. So that's one that stands out. Honestly, they're all going to be really good baseball games. We talked about earlier, there is a lot of parity in this conference, a lot of good teams, a lot of good baseball. So it should be a good tournament. And honestly, I mean, 1 through 8, you can't look at this tournament and say somebody doesn't have a chance. I mean, Penn State at the bottom is an offensive club that they get rolling and things could go well for them. So there's going to be a lot of good matchups, a lot of good baseball.
Who are the individuals that people should be watching this week, Jeff? And I know it's probably a long list, but are there a few that really intrigue you? And again, sometimes I think people pick this up at this time of year. They start to focus in on it when you get to a Big Ten tournament, when you get to the brink of the NCAA tournament. So for people who maybe don't know the league as well as you do, who are those players that they should be focused on this week?
Yeah, probably offensively, the biggest name is Devin Taylor for Indiana. So he'll be playing tomorrow morning. He's had a big-time year, one of the Big Ten leaders in OPS, a lot of offensive categories. I think he's up to 17 home runs now in the season. And I got a chance to see him at Nebraska. He led off the Friday night and Saturday night games with a leadoff home run in each of those games. So he's a big-time power and potential. Nebraska, again, we talked about their front-end arms with Brett Sears and Mason McConaughey are their top two arms. They're really, really good, two of the best pitchers in the conference. And then Brody Brecht, again, like he is the ace for Iowa. And he'll sit around 100 miles an hour with a fastball, first-round draft pick type guy, just has electric stuff. So those are some of the ones I'd look for. Again, we talked the Illinois lineup is so offensive. And really the conference as a whole, there are a lot of guys that are really good hitters, right? And you don't have anybody that's 20 home runs plus, but there's a lot of guys that are in that 10 to 18 home run mark. So anytime a guy's in double-digit home runs, he's a threat to leave the yard. You make a bad pitch, you make a mistake, he'll be able to hit it out of the yard. So a lot of good talent in the conference.
Well, Jeff Lisey, can't wait to see how all of this plays out. Look forward to hearing your calls coming up here again, starting tomorrow morning, bright and early here on the Big Ten Network. Thanks, Jeff.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Up next, they are a rowing machine. The Michigan women have dominated the league for years, but even by their standards, this week was quite impressive. Their head coach stops by next. For the 9th time in school history, the Michigan women's rowing team capturing a Big Ten title this weekend and doing so in dominating fashion, capturing 5 of the 7 boat classes. Michigan totaled 189 out of a possible 192 points. That is the 3rd highest team total in Big Ten history. They move on to the NCAA championships 2 weeks from now. Those will be held outside of Cincinnati. The NCAA berth is nothing new, as we see in our big stat, which is brought to you by Gatorade. It is the 16th straight season the Wolverines have made the tourney. I mentioned the 9 Big Ten titles. In addition to that, they finished second 10 times. So in the top 2, 19 times since 2000. That gets us to our big interview. The only coach ever to lead the Michigan women, that is Mark Rothstein. He joins us now. Coach, congratulations. A dominating performance. I mentioned the 3rd highest team score in Big Ten history. What has made this particular group so good?
Well, thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me. I think, you always start with the seniors. It's a really strong, big senior class. We had our student-athlete graduation a couple weeks ago, and I was kind of wondering if we're going to have a team next year because there's so many kids who are graduating. But their leadership and their development over the years, I think, has led us to have the depth that allowed us to win so many of the events.
You talk about the depth, and I want to elaborate on that a little bit. I want people to understand kind of how the scoring works first, because I think that's really interesting, and it speaks to have a really great program like you have. It's not about having a few superstars. I mean, that certainly helps, and you've had Olympians, and we'll get into that. But what it's about is having quality people in each of the boats, and you guys won the first and second boat in novice and varsity. So pretty amazing there. Help people understand like how it's weighted, how the varsity boats compare to the novice boats.
Yeah, so there's 4 boats, or 8 boats. There's the first, second, third, and fourth. The third and fourth are made up of first-year collegiate rowers. And then there's 3-4 events as well. And the scoring is you get different points per play. So if you win the first 8, you get 9 points per play. So if you win it, you get 72 points. And then the second 8, you get 6 points per place. The first 4, you get 3 points per place. And then the third 8 and the second 4, you get 2 points per place, and the third 4 and the fourth 8, you get 1 point per place. So, you go out and race all the events, add up the points, and whoever has the most wins.
How have you been able to develop such amazing depth? I mean, again, like you look at the roster, I mean, this is a huge roster. This is a massive endeavor to find all of these student athletes. Why do you think you've been particularly gifted in terms of putting rosters together?
Well, I think the thing that if there's one thing I've done well, it's I've hired really good assistant coaches. And so they've literally scoured the earth for talent. And, Liz Tuppen is our lead recruiter and does an amazing job. And then Lauren Schmetterling coaches our freshman team. And so that group is made up of newer rowers or less experienced rowers, and she has developed some really talented rowers in her time here. And I think so the assistant coaches really have just brought in a lot of talent.
I mentioned off the top you are the only person ever to coach this program. You've been the head coach of the varsity team for 28 years. You coached 5 years at the club level at Michigan as well, and then oversaw that transition from a club team to a varsity team. I know it's a long time ago, but when you think back to where you were then, how does it compare to where you are now, just in terms of the way that the university has committed to this sport?
Well, being a head coach at the University of Michigan, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And I just feel like I was incredibly lucky to be in the right place at the right time. I think if somebody with my resume applied for this job now, they wouldn't have a chance. But I was fortunate to be the club coach, and we had success at a club level, so I was able to get the job. But yeah, Michigan is, I mean, the facility I'm in right now is a brand new, well, now it's 5 years old, indoor training center that's second to none in the world. We're just, Ward Manuel, our athletic director, just is very passionate about supporting the student athletes and having a great experience for the student athletes and supporting the coaches so we can do what we need to do. So really fortunate to be at Michigan.
It's pretty amazing, too. You kind of stumbled into rowing. I know you started college as a football player at Central Michigan and then decided to transfer midway through your sophomore year to Michigan, didn't play football. How did you happen into rowing?
My brother had rowed at Michigan State, and he, is a club program there, is a club program at Michigan. And so, I just basically went out for the team and started rowing. And it was, obviously very different than football, but also a lot of similarities, the work ethic and the training mindset. So, and then I was going to go to grad school after I graduated from Michigan and decided to take a year off, and they were looking for a coach to coach the novice women's squad. And I said I would do it. And they said if they couldn't find anybody, then they'd hire me. And that's what happened, and I've coached ever since.
They're probably very grateful in hindsight that they couldn't find anyone, and we're stuck with you because it has turned out really, really well here. It's interesting you mentioned being a Michigan grad and being from the state and all of that, in fact, from Ann Arbor. What has it meant to build this program in your hometown? It's your alma mater, like to take it from essentially nothing, from a club program to what it is now, a national powerhouse?
Yeah, I mean, other than my family, Michigan athletics is the most important thing in my life. And, I've known the fight song since I was probably 2 years old. So it's just very, Michigan means a lot to me. And, I just try to do right by Michigan and make our program represent Michigan the best way we can.
What are you proudest of with the program that you built?
What I'm proudest of is the athletes who have gone on. I mean, you mentioned we've had a lot of Olympians, but not everyone's going to be an Olympian, but we just have a lot of Olympic caliber people and that are doing great things in the world and changing the world in all kinds of arenas. And I like to think that, whether they're a teacher or a doctor or in business, whatever they're doing, they're a little bit better at it because they rode at Michigan. And so that's what I'm most proud of.
One of the things that I find really cool about how you built your program is that a lot of the student athletes that you recruit have never rowed before. And you're literally signing kids to commit to Michigan who have never been in a boat. So help me understand how you identify that talent, because it seems so contrary to the way we see recruiting work in other sports where kids start at age 4 working toward that scholarship. Here you're taking people who have never participated in the sport. Help people understand that, Mark.
Well, we have a kind of 2 squads, and we have that freshman squad, and that's made up of athletes, some of whom rowed in high school, but a lot of Michigan high schools don't have rowing. And so we are looking for the best athletes in the state who could become great rowers. And so we look at track athletes, swimmers, volleyball players. A lot of them are being recruited in their sport. And so we don't really have to sell Michigan to them, but we have to sell rowing to them and, come learn this new sport. And Lauren Schmetterling does an amazing job with that. And she's brought in some really talented, athletes that are now converting to being really talented rowers. But, I think the thrust, like in any sport, is getting those top level, junior national team athletes. And so that's a big part of our recruiting as well.
Let's talk about this current team. You've got the NCAAs coming up next a couple weeks from now, as I mentioned, that is in Ohio. What do you do between now and then? I imagine there's got to be some sort of a taper right before. Do you go hard for a while here? What's the balancing act?
It's a little different this year, I think, because I think that we probably will be looking at our boat selection. I thought that our first 8 was didn't perform to the level that I think it's capable of, and our second 8 had a great race. So, that kind of makes me want to look and see it. Do we have the right people in the first 8? Do we have the right order in the first 8? So that's going to require us to do some race pace pieces and selection work over the next 4 or 5 days. So we'll go pretty hard the next 4 or 5 days, get that sorted out, and then start a little taper for NCAAs.
Last question for you. You've been runner-up at the NCAAs a couple of different times. What would it take for this particular group to be at that level, among the top teams or maybe even the top team?
Well, we need to find some speed over the next 2 weeks. I mean, obviously winning a Big Ten championship is a big deal, and I'm really proud of our team. And we can't, as Bo Schembachler said, you either get better or you get worse, you never stay the same. And so we need to get better. And I think we have the potential to do that. So that's our focus over the next couple of weeks.
Well, Mark Rothstein, really cool story. Amazing to see you continue to have great success at Michigan. We're sure you'll make the Big Ten proud in NCAAs. Best of luck, and thanks for spending some time with us.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
We are back on Big Ten today. As promised, Sammy Netling is here to break down the softball. We're going to talk about the 4 NCAA teams from the Big Ten from this past weekend first, and the headline, obviously, is that nobody advanced to the Super Regionals. But let's get into some of these teams. Let's start with Northwestern. They won the regular season. They won a couple games in the NCAA tournament. They had the highest seed of any Big Ten team as a 2 seed. The issue is they were opposite a 1 seed that is just an absolute machine in Texas. They're the best team in the country, and they certainly showed it this weekend.
Yeah, and you even heard, Coach Drohan in the final post-game presser give the nod to Texas. This was by and far the best lineup that this Wildcat team has faced all season long. There is a reason that they are the #1 offense in the country right now, and they showed it, right? And you just felt in both matchups, right? In the Saturday game as well as the regional championship, the Longhorns were just too much for the Wildcats. But you have to tip your cap. This was a Northwestern team that essentially made it to the regional championship without their Big Ten Pitcher of the Year, Ashley Miller, right? She continued to struggle with control issues in the circle, and so they did it on the backs of two freshman arms in Grudzlianek and Cunningham, both getting 20 total postseason innings this weekend. For a young Wildcat team, I think this is something that they certainly can build upon moving forward.
Yeah, to your point, really young team. Those freshmen get incredible experience in the circle against a dominating lineup, and we'll see if they can build on it next year. This is a program that's only a couple years removed from playing in the Women's College World Series. What about Michigan? They also got 2 wins this weekend, also in elimination games. Like Northwestern, they got to the regional final against Oklahoma State. They were in the same position where you got to win twice. You got to beat a team twice. They were a little closer than the Wildcats were against the Cowgirls. Ultimately fell a little bit short. What did you see from Michigan?
Yeah, I felt like for this regional in particular, Michigan had to come out with that first game victory, right, against the Wildcats. It is so difficult in this regional double elimination format to lose your first game and battle back through that loser's bracket. Credit to the Wolverines, right? They did it. They won their 2 must-win games, elimination games on Saturday, but they were in a position to be able to punch their ticket in the first game and were just unable to deter a Wildcat 7th inning rally where they got just the go-ahead walk-off victory. But they got them in the rematch, right? Set up the regional final, and I just felt like in that matchup on Sunday for the championship, Lexi Kilfoyle, who was just named top 3 National Player of the Year finalist in the circle for the Cowgirls, just got the best of the Wolverines. They just had no answer offensively, and we really just saw them stutter there at the end.
Still a pretty amazing year, right? Won 29 of their last 36 games as a team. I think if you would have talked early on in the season, as we've discussed, it didn't look like they would make it to the NCAA tourney after missing it last year. They end up winning the Big Ten tournament. A lot of positives there from Michigan as Bonnie Thole puts her stamp on that program. Let's talk about Indiana. They lost both of their regional games. I'll tell you that first one to Washington, man, that was a heartbreaker because they were in a position to knock off the Huskies. And then, as you say, that changes the complexion of everything.
100%.
If you win that first game, you're not in that spot where you're coming through the loser's bracket. It kind of fell apart there at the end with the Huskies in the last couple innings coming through with some big offensive production, but still lots to feel good about for the Hoosiers, a team that now has made the tourney 2 straight years.
Yeah, and this was the toughest regional that any Big Ten team was in by and far, right? They go toe-to-toe with the Huskies. There was 5 lead changes in that game, just offensively back-to-back, continuing to throw punches. They lose that first game and then are set up with the host seed, the national 7 seed Mizzou, because those Tigers lost to Omaha, the 4 seed in their regional in game 1, and I just felt like that was the killer, right? To have that matchup where you're essentially going against a Washington Husky team that very well most people thought could have been a 16 national seed in just the way that they finished. They were 13th ranked nationally almost all season long. And so they went toe-to-toe with 2 of the best teams in the country. For another young Hoosier team, I think, tip their cap for how they were able to bounce back this season.
And again, lots of positives, as you say. They're really young. They made the NCAA tourney in consecutive years. First time that had happened in like 4 decades. So there's a lot of positives there for Indiana. But that's a tough break. Tough break to have
100%.
to face Mizzou on the road in that second game after that stunning upset. Penn State was a great story this year, and I know we said when they got in the bracket, hey, we don't just want to be happy to be here, and I don't think they were. I mean, they got into the tournament for the first time in 13 years, and then they won a game as well. What do you take from Penn State's performance?
I mean, we talked about before, right? Would they be would they be able to handle the lights and the big stage? And they did. They were in a position to win game one as well, right? They took a lead to the 6th, and Texas State just was able to come back and to weather the storm there against Bridget Namath. I mean, the freshman was so tough in the circle, as she was all season long, putting this offense in a position to win games. I love the way that they competed. Again, no consolation prizes, but went toe-to-toe with Texas State, gets their first postseason win. And again, in the elimination game, the rematch against Texas State, they had a lead going into the 5th, right? I mean, they were in a position to punch a ticket to the regional championship. And so more than anyone, I think Coach Crowell can walk away with this young squad saying, okay, this year, our goal was postseason. We did that. Next year, our goal is even more, right? Regional championship, put ourselves in a position to advance even further. I was really impressed by the poise and composure of the Nittany Lion team that doesn't have that postseason experience.
And again, with a great young player, the pitcher in Namath. Texas State, look, they're good. I mean, that is a top 25 team. Unfortunately, Penn State 0-5 against them this year, but gave them some good games in the regional, just falling a little bit short. All right, good stuff from Sammy. Stick around. We're going to get some more. We're going to look ahead to next year. There's a lot to be excited about in Big Ten softball a year from now. But we have a special moment coming up next, a trip to Chicago on the line and a chance to learn from a trailblazing broadcaster, the Lisa Byington Award winner for this year, up next.
We're going to announce the winner of the Lisa Byington Award. We're in year number 3, and we've had fun making this announcements. Now, the finalists have no idea who has won or how we're going to reach out to them if they won. Year number 1 in Reagan Holgate, we did a complete cold call with her, surprised her. Year number 2 with Emma Carpenter, we surprised her on a Zoom call while I hopped on. Well, in year number 3, we had the idea of FaceTiming. Destiny Sanchez of Penn State is our winner, and we had the idea of FaceTiming her and surprising her. We got in contact with her little sister, so we're going to reach out, and Destiny has no idea that we're doing this. Let's see how it goes.
Come here. Hi.
Hi, Amber?
Yeah.
Is Destiny there?
Yeah.
Oh. Destiny Sanchez, Lisa Byington.
Hi, Lisa.
How are you?
I'm shocked. I'm surprised. How are you?
I'm good. I've come to call you with a surprise.
I'm ready to hear.
I just want to congratulate you on winning the Lisa Byington Award this year.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lisa. Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. I'm proud of you. You're making me emotional. I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of you for this because, the award has only existed for 3 years, but you're the first one to apply for it multiple years, and you did everything right. You reached out to me, you got feedback, you improved yourself, you got better. And in Destiny, I always say this, someone else's no doesn't have to be your no. And you live that in a small little bit of your story with this award, and so I'm really, really proud of you, and you did everything right, so congratulations.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for your generous feedback over this past year.
What an amazing moment that was less than a week ago. Destiny Sanchez now with us, and Destiny, again, it's fresh in your mind. It happened very recently here. Tell me what you were thinking when you saw Lisa pop up on that screen.
I mean, I still can't believe it. It's truly an honor to be receiving this award and to be recognized for, the hard work I've put in. And I just think Penn State has offered such great opportunities for me to grow and become a better broadcaster, become a better person. And it was no better way to put a cherry on top of senior year of winning this award.
I thought it was really interesting that Lisa pointed out that you had applied for it in multiple years, that you were close to winning it a year ago, but didn't, and then worked with her and got feedback and tried to figure out what you needed to do to improve. In what ways do you feel like you've gotten better in your craft in the last year?
I think I've really worked on my confidence. I think, trying to trust myself a little bit more, trust my knowledge, and trust my preparation. I do I really value my preparation before I do anything, either sideline reporting, analyzing, interviews. I never want to be not prepared. So I think in the past, maybe I didn't trust that preparation enough. And I think, just trusting myself, really digging into who I am when it comes to, sharing these stories, but also trying to, tap into the side of the story that the viewer wouldn't have known previously. Rather, it's not just the stats and what you can see and look up yourself, just trying to find something deeper in the surface than just the surface level.
Well, you've clearly learned a lot, because I think those are some really important things for succeeding in our business. As you say, preparation is the name of the game, and storytelling is so important in this day and age. So I want to ask you a little bit about what's ahead here in terms of the biggest part of the award is coming to Chicago and spending a day with Lisa. I remember last year, Emma Carpenter, the winner, came in. It was a day that I was here and got a chance to meet with her. But what do you hope to glean from that day? What do you hope to glean from being one-on-one with Lisa for a day?
Yeah, I think just trying to be a sponge, trying to learn from the best of the best. I think, Lisa is a trailblazer in this industry, not only just in broadcasting, but, women in sports in general. And I think just, I've always watched Lisa, and now being able to meet her in person and just pick her brain on, how she approaches every day, how she approaches her preparation. I'm really excited to do that and just really try to learn as much as I can. I'm always trying to receive constructive criticism or pick people's brains on how they approach their career and see how I can possibly apply that to my next chapter.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your craft. And it was interesting to hear you say the preparation is really important to you. A part of that preparation, it seems like, is a life as an athlete, that you were a softball player and a field hockey player in high school. How do you think those experiences, kind of leaning on being a competitor yourself, how does that inform the way that you communicate to viewers?
Definitely. I think that the root of me wanting to pursue this career is being an athlete. I think also the storytelling aspect is huge in the part of me wanting to do journalism. I actually applied to Penn State as a film major, got into Penn State as a film major. I think I really wanted to tap into that storytelling, but, once I got to Penn State, I tried going on camera for the first time, and I haven't looked back. But I think leaning into my storytelling roots and making short films and documentaries, and then combining that with me being the vehicle to share that information, I think that can just bring out my authentic side, where I do have passion for sports, but I also have a passion for storytelling. And I just think there's so many incredible stories in sport that I would love to be able to share.
Agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I think that's part of what makes it really cool. And I think part of our challenge as broadcasters is bringing out those stories, but also helping people who might not be sports fans. Like, you may not be a sports fan, but if you get connected to an athlete and connected to their story, I've seen it so many times where all of a sudden it generates an interest. So that being said, is there a story that you've been able to cover at Penn State, like a person who you have come in contact with, whose story has really resonated with you, who will stick with you as you move forward, not about the X's and O's or the stats or the numbers, but about them and their humanity and what they bring from their background that really touched you?
Absolutely. I think my favorite story that I've been able to share was actually an internship this summer. His name's Travis Mazzana. He is going to be the first Australian first-round draft pick in MLB history. And I was able to cover him this whole summer at Cape Cod, at the Cape Cod Baseball League with the Falmouth Commodores. And I did a sit-down interview with him. And yes, he talked about the MLB. Yes, he talked about, making all these records. But he really just talked about being Australian and the impact he wants to make on Australia. There's not a lot of baseball talent that come from Australia. And the interview really was about the impact he hopes to make on the sport and on his home country. And that, I think, is the epitome of the types of stories that I hope to continue to share, where it's the human interest story of the athlete, the coach, the team. Those are the stories that I'm really passionate about, and I was grateful to be able to share that, and I'm excited to see where he gets picked coming up in June and July.
It's certainly a really good story there. In terms of your experience at Penn State, is there one thing you got to cover that will resonate with you the most, kind of a game or a particular team that you most enjoyed being a part of and being around?
I think, when Penn State men's basketball came back to Rec Hall this past year, they played a game in Rec Hall where Penn State men's basketball normally plays in the BJC. It's a bigger arena.
Right.
Rec Hall has a lot of rich history for Penn State athletics, and it was a packed crowd and a really passionate crowd. And it brought conversations on, should Penn State basketball go back to Rec Hall? I think that moment was a good moment for Mike Rhodes and the new Penn State basketball dynasty he's trying to build. So that was definitely a special moment in Penn State athletics with my time here.
That was great. A game that was here on the Big Ten Network, an incredible atmosphere there in State College. So you're graduating, as you said, you're moving on now from State College. What's next? What do you want to do with this potential career?
Yeah, I think that, the job hunt I'm still navigating, but I really hope that whatever I do, I just want to be able to tell those stories that can peel back the curtain, can tap into, I want to be able to build the credibility and the trust within the industry to be able to have that respect and have the trust to be able to tell those types of stories. I think I wouldn't have been able to tap into the side of, the adversity or the bigger reason to play without building that credibility and trust. So wherever I go and everywhere that I do go, I hope that I can establish that and just be able to impact people either within the sports world or outside the sports world. Like you said, impacting people that may not even be sports fans, but interviewing athletes, coaches, teams. I really hope that I can do that throughout my career.
Well, Destiny, you're off to a tremendous start. Congratulations on this award. We look forward to seeing you in Chicago and look forward to seeing where this wonderful career takes you. Congratulations, and thanks for spending a few minutes with us.
Thank you so much, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Wrapping things up on Big Ten today and wrapping up the softball season with Sammy, who rejoins us. We talked about off the top of your segment, it wasn't a great year for Big Ten softball. No one in the super regionals. Obviously, there's a major injury, which was a factor in this season, maybe being a little bit lower than expectations. We'll talk about that in a second. There's a future Big Ten team in the super regionals, though, in UCLA, which kind of spins it forward to next year. How do you think expansion is going to impact the Big Ten?
High tides lift all ships, right? That's the saying, and it is truer in no greater aspect than Big Ten softball. You're talking about national perennial top 25 powerhouses, right? UCLA, no one's won more titles. No one's been to more consecutive tournaments, 39, the longest standing record. Washington's been to 30 straight NCAA regionals. Again, we talked about a team that thought they could have very well been in the top 16 for a national host seed. And then you have an Oregon who has been as steady as ever, just 4 straight tournaments. They had a little blip there, but they are a perennial top 25 national name. I think there's only going to be improvements moving forward for Big Ten softball.
Yeah, you only have to look back a year. Washington was in the Women's College
Right.
World Series. Oregon was a super regional team. What about Nebraska and Jordy Ball? I mean, to me, that was so dispiriting. It was so rough to see. Felt terrible for her. But obviously, Nebraska expects her to be back next year.
Yeah, I mean, that was the headline of Big Ten softball, right? Coming into this season, I had so many folks ask me, who's the Caitlin Clark of Big Ten softball? It's Jordy Ball, right? 2-time All-American, 2-time Big 12 Pitcher of the Year, National Freshman of the Year, National Player of the Year finalist, both years of her eligibility. I mean, just a game changer in every aspect of the game. I cannot wait to watch her compete for the Huskers next year.
44-2 on the mound in her time
Dominant.
in Oklahoma.
Dominant.
I mean, just again, and it's a game where pitching matters so much.
100%.
Just a phenomenal player. She's the MVP of the Women's College World Series last year. So Nebraska figures to trend up. Anyone else that you have an eye on for next year?
Yeah, I love, we talked about the newer coaches and some of these programs that are improving, right? Coach Stanton with the 40 game wins in 2 straight seasons for IU. You talk about Coach Crowell, right? Getting to the tournament in the first time in over a decade. She took a team a freshman class that had 7 wins in 2019. Wow. Over 4 years, they're now an NCAA tournament team, right? And the list goes on and on. Coach Butler at Rutgers, their highest finish since entering the conference. Coach Frizzotti at Purdue, their most Big Ten wins since 2014, right? The tide is lifting across the conference right now.
Well, there is a ton to look forward to, and we look forward to talking about it with you starting next spring. Sammy Netling, great stuff. Thanks so much for joining us. I want to remind you, no show tomorrow because the Big Ten baseball tournament gets underway here on the Big Ten Network. We'll see you Wednesday.